This video covers the content of the reflective writing workshop. After you've watched this video, you'll understand what reflection is and why it's useful. You'll have looked at some reflective models and understand the features of good reflective writing. So reflective writing is when you look back at something that you have done or something you've experienced. And you might do this in a diary or a journal. You might just discuss it with colleagues or your lecturers. It might be self-assessments or creating a SWOT analysis, looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats of that situation. Or you might be asked to do this as part of an assessment, a formal reflective essay that's either free form or using a model. And it's important to understand why you're being asked to do this. It helps you to understand how you can improve and to think about how you can be better at what you're doing. It helps you to learn about the experiences that you've had and to be self-critical, and enables links between the theory of what you're learning in the classroom and then what you're actually putting into practice. Now, this image shows a collage that's been created by a geography student as part of a research project carried out in 2014 at Staffordshire University, actually. And the student has created the collage using a variety of materials that they've been provided with, and they've placed them on the paper to represent how they feel about their journey through life so far and through their studies. So if you want to pause your video at the moment just to consider the questions you can see on the screen. First of all, what do you see? And then what do you think it means? And when you've decided on those questions, how effective do you think this collage is at representing a student's thoughts? This particular student had explained that they'd used the materials. First of all, they'd created a river using the wool and the pathway that the river was taking. The arrows and the dots represent their journey through their studies. And they've kept on the page the materials they've discarded because they're aware that actually things don't always go to plan, and that even if you don't normally want to use those things, you might actually need to rely on them at different points throughout your life. So it's important to keep them close to hand. Now, while you were answering those questions, you're describing what the situation is. You're then analysing it by explaining what you think it means, and then you're evaluating it by thinking about how effective it is. And those three things are the three things that you have to include in any academic reflection. You need to describe, you need to analyse, and evaluate. Now let's look at those three things and what they look like inside a range of models. So the Driscoll model is one of the most common reflective models used. It has three sections. The first is the what section, in which the writer needs to describe the relevant information about the situation, explain what happened, what was done, and then indicate what the outcome was. The next section, so what, is where the situation is analysed. The writer might explain why this happened in that particular way and how it worked, how it made a difference, how could things have been different. And this section should be rich in academic evidence. The final section, what now, is your evaluation. So this is where a judgment can be made about this situation. Was it a good situation overall? You can highlight the positives and negatives that occurred and include what you've learnt, and then move on to an action plan. So what can I learn now that's going to help me in the future, and how am I going to do this? Similarly, the Gibbs model is another very commonly used one. This has 6 sections. Experience is where you describe what happened. You then indicate your feelings about that. You then evaluate it, make a judgment about what happened. Your analysis is in the 4th section, as before, rich in academic evidence explaining why it happened like that and how it worked or how it didn't work. In section 5, you come to a conclusion, and then in 6, you include your action plan, which then takes you on to the next experience. Another fairly commonly used one is Kolb's experiential learning cycle. The first section, concrete experience, is where your description will be. Reflective observation is explaining why things happened like that, so that's your analysis. Abstract conceptualization is considering what experts have said about it. So that's where you would bring in your evidence from research papers. And then active experimentation is where you would put that learning into practice in the future, explaining your action plan. This is a summary example using Driscoll model, where you can see the what includes what happened, including the outcome, indicating what happens at the end. There's no analysis in that section. It's just explaining what happened. The so what section then is exploring why it happened the way it did. So looking at some theory about what makes group work and what's the best practice for group work. There's a comparison between your group's behaviour and what would be best practice. So include lots of citations to back all of that up. And then your now what section kind of makes an evaluation about why your group didn't work and what was the positive about it, but what was negative about it as well. And then indicate what can be done next time to ensure that it would work better and how you could support the one student who wasn't doing his fair share. Now, obviously, this is an abridged version. This is a short version to fit on the slide, so you would need a lot more detail if you were writing your own version of this. Now, it's important as well, while you're referring to the literature in your analysis, to make critical points about that literature to demonstrate your critical thinking skills. So consider the kind of critical points that could be made about literature. It could be related to the age of the literature, the research methods employed, how the sample size, how the participants were chosen, or how big the sample size was, or even where the research was carried out. And if you want more information about this, please attend the critical writing workshop or watch the critical writing workshop video. Now, this list here shows some problems that are often seen with reflective writing. It can be too descriptive, sort of telling a story but not explaining why that story occurred as it did. Or it might be too broad. There might be lots of different issues and it's trying to cover all of them. Actually, it would be better to go, well, there were a lot of issues in this situation, but this reflection is going to focus on one or maybe two of them. Sometimes a model is stated in the introduction. Well, this reflection is going to use the Driscoll model, but then there is no obvious relation to that model, no structure, no headings according to that model. There is often no evidence. It's very personal and about what I think about it or what the writer thinks, but not actually backing that up with evidence or any relevant documents. And sometimes it can kind of fizzle out when you need to start thinking about what development, what your action plan is going to be. And sometimes there's no adherence to the learning outcomes for the module, which is obviously important because that's why you're doing it in the first place. But to turn this more positively, though, these are things that are seen in really good reflections. The description in these is nice and succinct, but has the appropriate detail and just says what happened. There's no analysis in the description and the story doesn't carry on in the other sections. The analysis is focused on just one or two elements and not every single thing that could be analysed, and explores what happened in detail. It explains why it happened like that and how it happened like that. Options are compared. Impacts and outcomes are explored. The model is used well to structure the assignment, and then academic evidence is used, referring to appropriate research, policy, legislation, etc. An action plan sets out exactly what's going to be done to achieve further learning, maybe in another training course or maybe further reading, for example, and all of the learning outcomes are covered during the assignment. So in conclusion, when you're being reflective, it means you're analysing the situation that you've described, you're looking at it in detail and demonstrating how you've learnt from it so that you're going to be able to cope with it better next time. But it's also important to remember that when you're doing an academic reflection, this needs research to be carried out as well. So you need citations to academic sources, books and journal articles, and then a reference list that's referenced correctly according to the referencing style for your subject. I hope this video has helped you to understand how to tackle your next reflective piece of writing.